right, everybody. Yeah, we're back. Thank you very much for staying with us this morning. So the same sunset from Clifton Hill, but from another angle, from Kim Govaya. All right, so we have Kim working overtime for us. You're seeing a jetty in the background there? Yeah? All right, thank you very much, Kim. All right, so here's what everybody, so we are moving on. So we do have in studio this morning Rudolph Hanamji, attorney at law, advocate, and chief executive officer of ourPARTT, our portal of accountability and representation of Trinidad and Tobago. The national civic platform is focused on strengthening participatory democracy, promoting transparency, and advancing accountable, ethical leadership. Rudolph, thank you very much for coming this morning.
Of course, thank you, Marlon. Good morning to you and all of our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, so let's get into it. ourPARTT. We did say a lot at the beginning in that introduction here, but break it down for us. Let's talk about the aims and objectives. Let's talk about if this portal has already been launched, what the response has been, and so on.
Thank you again for having us. You would recall, and maybe some of the viewers, that just after the elections in late April last year, we were here with you sharing about our plans. So yes, we have launched in a soft way, because work like this, public policy work and community development, actually a lot of it takes place on the ground, not in the airwaves. And when we launched, leading up to the elections, we had hosted a series entitled We the Youth, and where in that we had engaged a number of youth leaders in different sectors to comment on public policy. Through that type of engagement, we were also able to identify a number of fledgling and existing NGOs and civil society groups in spaces such as farming, technology, recidivism reduction, and even in education. That data, fortunately, unfortunately, Marlon, has led us to the findings that there's a lot of fragmentation in civil society. So the launch, while we were very excited and there has been positive feedback, it has uncovered multiple layers of this onion that we have to focus on. And that's why Civil Society Week, which starts today in Europe, is so important for us to place a spotlight on those fragments, the gaps, and the solutions that all of us can probably bring to bear to ensure that civil society is stronger. ourPARTT's mission, as you read out, at its core really is how do you get the average citizen, not intellectuals, professionals, or academics alone, but the working class man and woman out there to just be a little bit more engaged and aware of what passes for public policy and how it affects them and where they can use their voice. And one of the best ways of doing that is meeting people where they are at. And most people belong to some sort of sporting organization, religious group, social enterprise. So if you touch the NGOs and the CBO space, chances are you're going to interact with these people and you'll have an opportunity to help them get more involved. So that's what this is all about. And one of our signature projects, which is called the Pansu Collective, which we spoke to you about last year, is where this work is centered.
I want to speak a little bit, but let's get into that concept now, the Pansu concept, and tell us a little more about that.
The name is short for Panchayat Susu.
Right.
And for those of us who are old or young enough to understand the relevance of that in our history, our peoples were able to develop resilience, empowerment, economic freedom through these very homegrown, community-based models of collaboration.
Simple but effective.
Simple and effective. And again, for those younger ones out there who are not familiar, the Panchayat model was a system where communities would bring elders and young people together, and they would discuss and solve community issues right there. If there were disputes, whether legal or otherwise, there were marital problems, if there were people in the community who wanted to open a business and were seeking funding. And then the Susu model, which still persists today, where people would join together and they would contribute a hand, as we say in parlance, and 1 month you would access that funding and another month someone else. That was a way for people outside of formal institutions to find ways of working together and building society. So we looked at that with an innovation lens, and we said if we were able to bring technology modern approaches, some corporate methodologies to these types of models, then we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just make the wheel spin faster. So the project looks at, first of all, developing a structured database of as many NGOs and CBOs that exist. And by doing that, we can develop niches and segmentation. So in some areas, you have 20, 30 plus NGOs focused on that problem, like women's rights or even education. But in other spaces like farming and maybe even technology, fishing, rural development, you don't have as many.
Yeah.
And even within each segment, different NGOs have access to varying levels of resources. So what we're trying to do is develop a current state assessment, present that to the private sector and philanthropists, bring them into the mix, apply the right type of resources, and provide a lot of training opportunities, financing, access. And then by creating more resilience and strength within the NGO movement, they can then be better positioned to inform government policy and to not only access the resources of the state, but to apply them in a way where we solve problems. Because if we think about it, the irony is, if we solve many of these social and economic problems, many of these NGOs won't be necessary anymore. But then we can transition that skill set and all of those resources into other national endeavors. Rather than just plastering sores, we can solve the problems and move on to more important work.
Two things. You would have spoken about fragmentation. What's contributing to this fragmentation? That's number one. And number two, when you're speaking about people power and people participation, I think that there is a bit of hesitation by people to participate, because if they participate and they do have a view that may not be a popular view, they feel that here's what, I'm going to be discriminated against, I'm going to be victimized and so on. And I think that that has been a problem when it comes to the NGOs and organizations that are doing a lot of work in the communities and so on. So again, the fragmentation, and how do you deal with people want to participate, but they're afraid?
That is the nail that you've hit on its head. Even right now, today is the beginning, as I may have mentioned earlier, Civil Society Week in Europe, which is being hosted by the European Economic Committee, Social and Economic Committee. Believe it or not, even in what we describe as first world nations, these are the same issues that civil society faces. And that is why across the world right now, I mean, over the weekend, of course, we've seen the, what they call it, the war, the campaign, what is happening in Iran, and a few weeks ago what happened in Venezuela. And when these things happen, you see a number of social groups, advocacy enterprises raising their hands. And you ask yourself, well, wait a minute, where have you been for the last decade? And the fact is, they have been doing work on the ground, but they have been victimized and oppressed. Because a number of social enterprises, if we bring it back to Trinidad and Tobago, they actually arise because average persons who are facing their own issues from vulnerable and marginalized groups, they take it upon themselves, Marlon, to try and activate and mobilize. But they do not have access to some of the resources and privileges that many of us in society have. So they put their hands up, and then some of us turn around and say, well, okay, they're dealing with it. But that's not fair, because if we don't join with them and complement, not speak for them or to take over their work, but to, again, provide them with that support, that hand up, not hand out, then they cannot really succeed. And if they don't succeed, then society is worse for it. So there is some of that fear in the society, but there's an even deeper issue, and that is the need for better collaboration. Unfortunately, many times people are competing in the same pot for the resources that are required, and they're not working more effectively together and communicating. So it takes two hands to clap. Yes, there's some fair and at times political forces push back because civil society work is not sexy and clean. It has an effect of sometimes making governments look bad,
of course,
because public policy is not meeting the need. But putting that aside, that is one piece of it. The civil society groups also have to structure themselves in a more cohesive manner, and they have to be able to meet their own the needs that are required of them for the occasion in front of us.
But we also live in a country, Rudolph, where small organizations, persons who head these organizations and so on and who are involved, they feel that they don't have a voice, right? Because because people, there is the narrative that, you know, nobody is taking us on, and sometimes you see the same players all of the time, right? But the point is that I'm trying to make, while you feel that you may not have a voice or no one is listening or you don't have a seat at the table, but speak a little bit about the importance still of this contribution and this participation as it relates to government policy implementation.
I will touch on something that is, you know, dear to many people, and that is, for example, animal activism and animal rights.
Yes.
My mother is a noted, Nalini Dial is a noted animal rights activist. For decades, animal rights activists, they positioned various administrations, they took money out of their own pockets to support that movement. But over time, little by little, especially with the advent of social media and modern technology, their voices were amplified.
Yes.
And the broader population, especially the younger generations, bought into these narratives. And they were able to actually get successive administrations to change public policy. The former administration made changes to the animal protection legislation, and the current administration, of course, brought the fireworks legislation and referred to the advocacy of these groups. Now, in other spaces, whether it's in child empowerment, women's rights, even representation of prisoners, we have persons on remand yard, for example, who are there longer than if they were found guilty. These are all social issues that have been maintained in the public discourse because of the work of advocates and civil society groups. Farmers' rights when flooding takes place or when government passes the budget. These groups are able to engage government, submit policy, and create paper trails. So, yes, it moves slowly. Sometimes it's like molasses.
Yeah.
We would like it to flow faster. But that is where Pantsu Collective comes in.
Yes.
We are aiming to ensure that corporate society, now a lot of corporations already support civil society through CSR initiatives. And of course that falls under the ESG framework, the environmental, social and governance frameworks that a lot of companies are looking at. But many times those interventions are not properly metricized. So again, it becomes a flash in the pan. What we are offering is a better matchmaking service where we are able, through the current state assessment, to showcase the corporate citizens and corporate Trinidad and Tobago that these are all of these NGOs that are operating in this space. There's a more of a menu-based approach.
Yes.
Come and join with us to build capacity, support training and financing opportunities. And that way, as a corporate citizen, you don't directly have to get involved on the front line if that is something that is problematic for you, again, because of issues around victimization and fear. But by supporting these vulnerable people who are brave enough to put their hands up, we can be more effective in how they implement their work. And that is all what we are trying to build over this week.
Yes.
As a national call for NGOs, CBOs to register, and for private citizens who already support or who are interested in supporting to also come forward and say, I want to be part of this.
Talk about your webinar. I see where there's an opportunity for people to register.
If you go to ourPARTT with 2ts.org, or you go to our social media handles, you will see by lunchtime today a registration link where you can register your NGO and CBO during this week. If you do that, you will have free access to a three-part webinar series that will look at areas such as structuring your NGO, creating value proposition and better use of communication tools for advocacy work. Those webinars lead up to what we're hoping to be a national event that will bring civil society and the corporate sector together later this year. So again, it's Civil Society Week. You have a lot of work, especially coming out of Carnival. Even during Carnival, you saw different groups in rural Trinidad putting their hand up that represent cultural organizations, represent the arts. All of this makes up the civil society framework, the tapestry. Any group that is focused on social work, human rights advocacy, arts, culture, you are an NGO, a CBO in your own right. Register, let us hear from you, and then we can begin the process of developing that current state mapping and help you engage with the private sector more effectively.
So ourPARTT, it's really providing this sort of infrastructure and this umbrella portal, if I can put it that way, for NGOs to fine-tune their skills and services and to provide a better, I suspect, service to members of the community. Of course, leading into mid-year review territory, because everyone follows the national budget.
Yes. And March, April tends to be that when the governments return, the administration returns to Parliament. Now is the time for civil society groups, but in a structured way, to re-engage, because some of them would have submitted before, which helped inform the budget in September, October. But it's time to now reassess what have we been able to access, what are the new or continuing problems, so that when the administration returns to Parliament, they can revise the allocations accordingly or highlight where the public policy has been effective or not, and get the Parliament support in moving forward. Because at the end of the day, that's where the rubber really hits the road. Are public policies and incentives and programs effectively allowing civil society to, as I said earlier, not just put plasters on issues, but attack the core reasons for these social and economic challenges, and once and for all solve them or reduce them, so that in 10, 15 years we're not having the same conversation.
Yeah, Rudolph, I just have about a minute again. Anything else you'd like to add?
ourPARTT with 2ts.org. I really want to thank the private sector that is already out there supporting these people and these NGOs, and I want the national community to congratulate and support NGO and CBO work. Let us have a return, especially of young people, to civil society work, Marlon. We need more voluntarism, and for people to give their skills to help build a better Trinidad and Tobago. Because if you do your part and I do my part, we do our part to build a better Trinidad and Tobago.
I knew you was going to say that, Rudolph.
And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's always good to see and speak with you. Thank you very much for the good work that you all continue to do in the community. I think it's hard work, but necessary work. I know it's work that you don't get praise for, but thanks again. We do appreciate it. Yeah?
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we are going to a very short break. We are coming back.